A15. Shop maintenance of the AB control valve. A. General. The purpose of these instructions is to avoid unnecessary expense due to careless handling of the parts. It is possible to dismantle assemble all parts of the valve readily. It excessively force is required. If excessive force is required, make an investigation immediately as to the cause of the difficulty. 2. Dismantling the operation portions of exercises care to avoid distortion of the belt, studs, nuts, and like items by using tools especially adapted for this type of work. Similar care must be taken to avoid mutilation or damage by the dismantling the valves with respect to pistons, springs, gaskets, slide valves, and graduating valves and like items. 3. Complete dismantle of the operation portions layout of the parts illustrated by in the figures 820 through 825. Wash all metal parts in approved and solvent and the dissolve oil and grease within the abrasions. 4. Dip all gaskets. Remember seated valves in the approved solvent to assist the removal of greasy dirt, and immediately wipe dry after clean. Do not soak the parts with and cleaning fluid. 5. Replace all gaskets with broken, flattened beads or replace all gaskets which have broken or flattened beads. Any of these revealing cracks, cuts, or diaphragms or sealing surfaces. Remove and replace all O-rings. Brush serviceable gaskets within soft bristle brushes such as a shoe brush to remove any of the remaining dirt to give them a polish. 7. Check all piston bushings for the shoulders, grooving, cracks, pitting, hollowing ring, bearing surfaces, and 4. Taper outround with a dial indicator gauge, if necessary. True up the bushings on a precision grinder, boring a machine or hand grill grinder before being gauged on the ring size. After bushings are reconditioned, wipe them and oily clean in the wipe cleaning of with the cleaning oil lint-free cloth. Finally, clean approved solvent to the remove of all traces and powdered brushes material before reassembling the piston. 8. When necessary to remove and replace a piston ring, use suitable tools to avoid damage to the groove. 9. Splice socket chokes plugs are now supplied in places of screwdriver slotted type. The spleen socket type can be readily removed or applied without damage of the choke plug or to the thread of the tapped hole. 10. The size of the chokes is important, and the choke fittings must be removed, cleaned, and inspected to ensure that they are not restricted. Do not use a metallic tool of cleaning chokes as they are sized, as the shape must be not changed. Check passages, clean ins, or blow out of the necessary. Replace chokes and same location from which is removed. The choke fittings for each portion are described under the heading of for that particular portion. 11. Replace all springs which show rust pits or distortions which have permanent set. A list of springs and table identification are presented under the heading of that particular portion. 12. The reassemble valve portions. Tighten the cap of screws nuts sufficiently to prevent the gasket leakage and not excessively to cause distortion of the cover or gaskets. B. The service portion. 1. The choke fittings. The service portion contains 5 choke fittings. The 5 choke fittings are shown in figure 820. The govern flow of the air through the portions or through the ports in which they are located in the following. A. The choke located in the body under the cover of the control of the flow of the air from quick service portion to the atmosphere. B. The choke located under the limiting valve controls the flow of air into the quick service passage between the slide valve and limiting valves. C. The choke located in cover controls the flow of air passage between the release ensuring the valve, slide valve, exhaust of the service lap position. D. The correct orifice size of each of the above 3 chokes is 1/32 of an inch drill. 2. 2 chokes do not illustrated which are located in the service portion body control the charging of the auxiliary reserve. The correct orifice size number is 57 drill or 0.43 thousandths of an inch. Springs of the service portion have total 10 springs, 9 coils, 1 leaf, which are identified as follows. Release ensuring the valve in figure 821 holds onto the valve on the seat until the brake valve pressure rises 1.5 pounds of the auxiliary reserve pressure. B. The diaphragm spring of the figure 822 acts as on the diaphragm of the quick service limiting valve to the hold on the valve's opening until the force of the spring is balanced and the brake cylinder pressure is 10 pounds. 10. C. The port piston spring and 12 figure 822 mounted on the stem resists the movement of the piston gradual valve after the feed grooves of the charging ports are closed and just previously opening the preliminary quick service port. Um, 820 shows the location of chokes in the portion of the body of the cover. You have the choke and the two chokes of the body cover in the service portion body. 8.1 is a spring identification AB1 service with approximate OD length and approximate diameter wire, approximate free height, and approximate number of turns of material. On reference numbers 8, 5, 12, 14, 7, 6, and 8 and 7. And figures 8, 21, 22, and 823. 3. Inspection and lubrication of the choke fittings. Check all choke sizes one above and coats threads of the choking fittings lightly of the compound consisting of one of the part graphic and 2 parts of the oil SAE 20 by the weight. Make sure these chokes are replaced in the same location from which removed. 4. Inspection and lubrication of the side valve. A. Remove the slide valve 16 figure 822 from the service portion. 22. Check the retaining pin in slide valve pin tube with the excessive wear. B. The remove shoulders of the roughness of the slide valve facing number FF280 carbon cloth placed on a lapping plate. They finish the slide side of the valve, lapping the plate using the flour of emery as an abrasive. C. The recondition the side valve in the seat of the body of the lapping face numbered FF280 carbonum cloth placed on the underside of the lap sticking tool. The return of the springs in 14 figure 822 returns the position slide valve in the retarded charge of the removable the slide of the valve spring 15 822 holds the service slide of the valve into its seat. F is graduating valve cylinder 17 figure 822 holds the graduating valve into its seat. G, check the valve seat valve spring. H figure 823 holds the eliminating valve check and black flow check to their seats. H, the check valve springs holds the auxiliary emergency reserve release check valves to the seats of the release of the valve plunger is done. I, the duplex release of the valve plunger 17 figure 823 returns the plunger to normal position when the operating rod is released to the seat so that the serve release of the check valve can return to the seats. J, the spring identification. The following tabulations gives the Westing air brake data necessary to identify each of the spring dedicated in table 8.1 spring identification AB portion. I guess we started out with in C, reconditioning. We'll go back over this. 4, inspection and lubrication of the slide valve. 16 from the service position and the check service position and the slides valve, slide valve pin tube, slide valve pin tube for the excessive wear. Remove the shoulder or roughness of the slide valve in the facing number FF280, the carbonium cloth placed on the lapping plate. The finishing slide valve of the lapping plate using the flour emery as an abrasive, reconditioning the slide valve seat of the body lapping stick in face with number FF280 carbonium cloth placed on the underside of the lapping sticking cool. Remove the burrs of all parts of the sliding valve seats. Do not enlarge the ports when removing the parts. Clean all parts of the organic solvent and type of the cleaner. Remove all the dirt, oil, gum, grease, and do not use an alkaline cleaning solution. Lubricate the entire surface with 1 drop of lubricating oil of the SA20. Inspection of the lubrication of the graduating valve. Check the lengthwise clearance of the graduating valve. 20 figure 28 822 at the piston assembly lengthwise clearance must be not less than 4 thousandths of an inch, and check the graduating valve seating in the body of the lapping seat of using H40 the fine carbonium compound of the approved metal polish. Through 822 service position portions release, you have 1 your service portion cover, 2 your cover gasket, 1 your 1/8 inch choke plug and drill, 1 and diaphragm follower, 5 your release insuring valve adjusting nut, 6 release of insuring valve lock nut, and 7 release of insuring valve cap nut, 8 releasing insuring valve spring, 9 releasing insuring valve 821 surface portion cover and release ensuring parts. C, through the cleaning of all parts with an organic solvent cleaner to remove all dirt and oil, gum, and grease. Do not use the alkaline cleaning solution. Lubricate the entire surface with 1 drop of lubrication oil, SA20. SAE20, inspection of lubrication of the self-oiling position, cleaning the piston rings and groove and dipping in the position of cleaning fluid and the moving of the ring around the groove and repeating the operation until the groove of the ring is thoroughly cleaned, and any early type of self-oiling position having 2 holes drilled on the piston head and near the top of the piston, and that must not be immersed in cleaning fluid. And for this type of the position piston, see the instruction 7 below. B, the rings are struck into the dirt and tightly to be moved into the groove soak of the ring, and then penetrating oil the tap of the ring gently a hard block of the drive flush on the top edge of the groove. The start of the tapping on the one side of the ring joint of the processing around the piston of the short steps until the ring loosens sufficiently to be moved in the groove. This procedure will not less loosen the ring, and is evident the groove is binding and must be reconditioned and a new ring fitted. See, when the new ring is fitted, place the ring in the body cylinder and snug should be obtained, and check the alignment of the piston position outside of the surface of the ring into the groove, the turn of the ring, and the full length of the circumference. Note that the ring is restricted from the turning free. If the ring does not turn free, remove the burrs and the repair as required. Piston ring in the groove, a slight drag should be felt with turning the ring in the groove. Note, when fitting new flat joint rings, they must be carefully installed with the narrow bearing surfaces scarf towards the brake pipe side. D, if which of the small crescent-shaped crescents of the bottom of the ring tool, the oil reserve is damaged, it may be placed in a new wick approximately 5/34 of an inch to the facilitate assembly. A special wick available having a bar wire on one end for the 2/4 of an inch is especially prepared for wicks of not available. Bear the wire by its burning. Start the wire down by the wick hole. Pull the wick of the hole until the 1/2 of the inch is left out of the ring groove. Bend the end of the wick across the middle of the breath or hole. The arc or last hole is recessed in section of the bottom of the ring groove. The cut the bare wire of the wick, and would it end in a counterclockwise direction and around the oil reserve, and the free end of the wick must not be obstruction of coming into the contact with 1/32 of an inch diameter breathe hole located adjacent with the wick hole of the oil reservoir. E, when the position and the groove are thoroughly clean and dry, the piston end of the ring above the lubrication hole of the ring bottom of the ring groove, and raise it into the ring of make sure that the lubricating wick is flat as the bottom is recessed in the proportion of the ring groove with which wick must not be touched, and ring and mouth of the breather hole. Remove oil plug within seals the oil reserve and drainage of the oil reserve. If the oil plug is hexagonal type, insert a cap screw in the outer taper opening and is not to be disturbed with the wrench when being removed, and use care to avoid twisting of the piston stem as the oil plug has been tightened and excessively tap lightly, and use some other means of loosening it rather than by means of wrenching and vicing, which causes damage. Here you see an 822 service portion of the body parts. You see a hex head cap screw, another two head hex cap screws, another hex head screw, cap screw, slide the diaphragm springs, 6 the spleen socket plug. 7 and 1/4 of an inch auxiliary reserve charging choke plug of the 0.43 thousandths of an inch drilled, and 1/4 of an inch choke plug about 1/32 of an inch drilled, and limiting the QS choke 1/2 an inch choke plug of the 1/32 inch drill, the QSH chamber exhaust. Spring seated retainer, 11 service portion, spring seat, piston springs, returning spring cage, 14 return spring, 15 slide valve springs, 16 slide valve, 17 graduation valve springs, 18 spring slide valve spring pin locks, 19 slide valve spring pin, 20 graduating valve, 21 piston spring guides, 22 service position, 23 piston oil plug, 24 diaphragm stop, 25 diaphragm follower. G, place the piston in the vise with the copper jaws and tighten open only enough to hold the piston without damage. The piston head of the horizontal position of the step down and will fill the reserve of lubricating oil. The oil level is at the bottom of the threads located in the center of the piston head of the tighten oil plug within the cap screw, still in the place if used only to tighten enough. Here is a quick service limiting valve parts, and you see, I'm going to back out of this for a minute to 75. You see, 1, the quick service limiting valve cover, 2, the check valve case, 3, the hex heads cap screws, 2 required, 4, cap screws, service limiting check valves, 2 RQQs, 5, check valve spring seated, 6 check valve springs, 7 check valve spring guide, 8 check valve spring, 2 RQURs, 9 square nut, 2 RQRs, 10 hex head spring 2 RQRs, 11 release valve handle end of the plate, 12 cotter pin, 13 release valve handle, 14 release check valve, 2 RQRs, 15 release valve body, 16 release valve plunger, 17 release valve plunger spring, 18 duplex release valves filling piece, 19 hex cap screws, 20 release valve body gaskets, 21 QNS limiting valves diaphragm, 22 check valve plunger, 23 check valve case gasket, 823 quick service limiting valve parts. To prevent oil and leakage, make sure that the oil plug makes the seal between the flange collar and the bearing surface on the piston, preventing the oil leakage out of the chamber. Remove the cap screws of the oil plug if used, and tighten oil. The plugs not hexagonal type. Use the torque wrench and light tightening of the force of 17 foot-pounds of 200 inch-pounds. Inspection lubrication on early type of self-oiling piston. The early vintage type of the self-oiling piston has 2 holes drilled in the piston head nearly to the top of the piston. The piston must not be submerged in the cleaning fluid to clean the ring of the groove. Squirting of the cleaning fluid around the ring and then move the ring around the groove. The repeating of the operation until the ring of the groove thoroughly clean. After the cleaning, blow the excess fluid away with a jet of air. If necessary, to remove the ring and from the position 6 above, remove the wick from the bottom of the groove and do not place when a new ring in if is applied. Following the same procedure with the filling of the oil reserve is described in 6 above. Inspection of lubrication of the release ensuring the parts, inspecting the release ensuring parts for the defects of the reseated valve seat of the necessary test spring for the proper tension, using the spring cage, applying new spring if required. Inspection lubrication of the quick service limiting valve duplex, release of the valve parts, or inspection of the quick service limiting checking valves and releasing check valves, seating of the pitting and renewing the found defective, lubricating the rubber check valves and replacing the box with a dry graphite. Shake the box, remove the check valves, wipe off the excessive graphite Casmos, and lubricate the 2 short prongs of the dupex. Release of the valve plunger, that bottom of the reservoir. Release the valve bottom of the brake cylinder, lubricating prior to the assembly of the body. 10. Assembly of the part of the service portion body. A. Press the side of the piston ring opposite the side of the scarf bottom of the ring groove, and apply 3 drops of the lubricating oil through the ring scarf opening. Restore the ring of the normal position. Carefully rotate the ring of the groove, distributing the oil and piston of the ring scarf approximately 1 inch on either side of the piston or the top center. B. Apply the few drops of oil, piston brushing, and distribute it evenly on the entire surface. Evenly distribute one of the drop of oil on the collar at the piston spring at the ending of the position, and the inserting of the piston and the slide valve in the body of leaving in the release position. C. The assembling the balance and the parts of the reserve order of the removal of using the new parts is required. 11. Performance of the code of the test. Install the reconditioning valve portion of the test rack. Refer to the TM5521 1023 for testing instruction. Emergency portion choke fittings. The emergency portion connects emergency portion. 1. The choke fittings. The emergency portion contains 6 choke fittings, and the figure 824 illustrates the location of those choke fittings. The instruction for the cleaning and checking the choke fittings in the surface of the portion apply for all chokes except for the chokes of 1, 3, 4, and which are not readily removable and should be cleaned in place. The removable chokes 2 and 5 and 6 must be removed and cleaned and replaced at replace one at a time. Remove the filter felt and choke of the 5 and clean and replace in the renewal and damage. If choke 5 is in an earlier type which does not have the felt, replaced with the later design or the latest design. A, the choke, and 3, which serves as the protect against excessive spillover. Check valve leakage is lubricated in bushings under the spillover bulb. Check 1, figure 8, 25 orifice size, 3/64 of an inch drill. Choke 4, figure 8, 24, which serves as a protect against diaphragm leakage is located as the bulb. Check it over the port in the port between the chamber above the spillover valves and chamber above the strut of the diaphragm orifice size number 69 drill. C, choke 1, which serves as to control the rate of this quick action chamber pressure reduction during the emergency application, is lubricated in the vent position orifice size number 69 drill. D, the choke 6, which controls this second stage of the flow of the air of the brake cylinder immediately after the inside of the valve closed during the emergency application, is lubricated in the emergency portion body of the accessible, removing 1/4 of an inch pipe plugged in an orifice of size 3/32 of an inch drill. E, choke 5, which controls the quick action chamber whose charging rate is located in the emergency portion body under the ball check cover. The attached filler and the felt prevents the restriction of the choke by very fine dirt, thereby ensuring the proper charging rate of the quick action chamber orifice size 73 drill. F, the choke 2, which controls the third stage of the brake cylinder pressure buildup during the emergency application, is located in the emergency portion covered the portion of the bypass choke is section when the timing valves opens the orifice size of 9/64 of an inch drill. 2 springs of the emergency portion contains a total of 9 wire springs which identify the figure 825 as follows. A, the accelerated release check valve spring 5 holds the check valve 4 into its seat. Split over check valve spring 6 holds the check valve 8 into its seat, and diaphragm spring 7 holds the slide valve into the seats of the diaphragm is balanced. Vent to the valve spring 20 holds the emergency vent valve into its seat, and E, the in-shot check of the valve spring 25 holds the check valve into the contact within an in-shot piston stem. And F, the emergency piston springs in 28 resists the movement of the spring guided in the piston stem. 8, G, the spring sprang at 31 returns the piston and the slide valve into the normal release position, and when the brake pipe is quick action chamber the pressure are equalized. H, the graduating valve spring 34 holds the graduating valve to its seat of the slide valve. 8, I, the in-shot spring piston 48 resists the in-shot piston movement of the unit until the brake cylinder pressure resides at 15 pounds. J, the spring identification of the following tabulation gives the Westing air brake data necessary to identify each spring described. In figure A24 locates the 6 emergency portion chokes. Fittings. 3, the inspection. You have the spring identification of the AB emergency portion with the reference 5, 6, 7, 20, 25, 28, 31, 84, and 48. Part numbers approximately OD and approximate diameter wire, approximately free height, and approximate number of turns in the material. 3, the inspection, lubrication, and assembly of the parts. Inspection and lubrication of assembly of the parts is the same part of the service portion of the following exceptions. A, the main emergency position cannot be removed. In the first removing of the ball check cover and in the taking out of the slide valve struts of the holes of the slide valve to its seats, damage will result in the force of use to remove the emergency position for the brushing without the first removing of the strut. The spring and behind the vent valve of the in-shot valve and are held in place on the circular metal retainers in which have the lugs up to opposite side of these lugs and engage under the lip under the outer edge of the cavities of the body casting. The remove of the spring of the valve, the pressing down on the spring retainer till it's so the one lug is exposed upward, and when its position in the part it's going to be removed and can be reassembled and using the same method as reverse. C, the vent protection chamfer of the exhaust of the emergency portion of the body is pitted excessively due to the rust finishing the surface of the emery cloth with a suitable reamer of do not remove. Here you see a emergency portion body. I'm going to try to back out of this to 75%, or we'll just start at the top. 1, you got your emergency ball check cover. 2, your emergency ball check cover. 1, the emergency ball check cover gasket. 2, the emergency ball check cover. 3, the slide valve chute. strut. 4, the accelerated valve check. 5, the accelerated release valve check spring. 6, spillover check valve spring. 7, diaphragm spring. 8, spillover check valve. 9, accelerated release valve check valve the spring seat. 10, diaphragm spring seat. 11, 3/8 of an inch spillover ball check. 12, 3/8 of an inch accelerated release ball check. And 13, vent valve spring seat. 14, small vent valve 14 small vent valve piston. 15, large vent valves piston. 16, emergency portion bodies. 17, vent protector. 18, cover gasket. 19, valve piston seat. 20, the valve vent spring. 21, the valve vent piston seal. 1/2 of an inch choke. 3/32 of an inch drill and shot delay choke. And 23, slide valve spring pin lock 2. 24, slide valve spring pin 2, 25, piston oil plug. 26, emergency piston. 27, emergency piston spring guide. 28, emergency guide or emergency piston spring. 29, emergency piston spring seat. 30, emergency piston spring seat retainer. 31, return spring. 32, return spring cage. 33, graduating valve emergency. Graduating valve spring. 35, emergency slide valve. 36, 1/4 of an inch pipe plug. 37, in-shot piston nut. 38, in-shot piston seal. 39, in-shot piston stem. 40 pin. 41, in-shot piston and stem. 42, 1.5 inch choke plug. Timing valve. 1/8 of an inch choke plug with a in-shot valve, delay choke. 44, in-shot valve, in-shot check valve spring retainer. 45, in-shot check valve spring. 46, in-shot check valve. 47, time valve. 48, in-shot piston spring. 49, in-shot piston spring seat. 450, hex head cap screws 30. 51, hex head cap screws 3. 52, in-shot piston spring shims. 53, emergency portion cover. And back. Any more of the material is necessary to obtain a clean surface. The chamfer must be held at a 45-degree angle to ensure proper fit and tightness to the vent protector. When the vent piston of the in-shot valve piston or assembled to the body, placed in 2 drops of oils, piston groove and the rotate of the ring and the groove the distributed oil inserted in the piston of the body and valve, evenly spread the 3 drops of oil around the piston bush, and then piston back of the several times of the removal of surplus oil from the outer edge of the cylinder. 4, performance of the code of the test. Install reconditioned valve portion of the test rack. Performance code of the test in accordance with the instructions of TM 55206. 18 shot but maintenance of an AB1B control valve. A, general maintenance of the AB1B control valve is the same as the AB control valve, paragraph 815, except for the addition of the filling of the pace selector valve portion located between the emergency portion and pipe bracket. Disassembly referred to the figure 826. Disassembly of the parts illustrated the extremely care of the dismantling the parts of the to avoid mutilation or damage to spring gaskets or diaphragm seals and like items. See the cleaning of the inspection. Wash all parts. Suitable solvent with the removal of oil, grease. Do not allow gaskets for rubber seated valves and the seek of the cleaning fluid. Inspecting valves of the valve spring for the wearing of the pitting and scoring, reconditioning, renewing of the required. 3, the checking spring for the rust and pits of distortion, breaks, cracks. Permanent spring set and spring should be having free height of 1.5 inch. 4, replace all gaskets. Diaphragm have been broken and flattened beds or flattened beads, cracks, swellings, and cuts in diaphragm. Sealing surfaces, coating all gaskets, diaphragms, and dry craft before replacing. Inspecting, washing excluder and defects, cleaning of the wire mesh compromise, and renewing and the founding defect. D, reassembly. Refer to figure 826 and reassembly the parts illustrated. Tighten nuts and cap screws evenly but not excessively to cause distortion of the cover of the gaskets. 817, shop maintenance of A2A quick service valve. A, in general. A2A quick service valve consists of the pipe bracket valve portion of the pipe bracket strainer used in the pipe bracket identically to the strainer used in the AB control valve pipe bracket, and 3 springs of the 1 choke is used in the valve portion. This is identified in figure 827, but the reference number is as follows: as A, the choke 3, the filter controls the charging of the quick service volume reserve. It is located in the valve portion of the body under the strut of the diaphragm strut cover. The attached to the choke plug is filters and the filter, which prevents the restriction of the choke very fine in the dirt, and thereby ensuring the upper charging rate of the quick service volume reserve orifice service of number 73 drill. In spring B, spring 11 holds of the piston slide valve to its seats, and C, the check springs of the 10 seats of the cutoff valve check valves, and D, the diaphragm follower springs of the 8 seats of the diaphragm follower. D, 8 diaphragm follower springs, 8 seats of the diaphragm follower. E, the following tabulation gives the data necessary to identify the springs described. And 8.3, see the spring identification of the A2A quick service valve. You have reference number 11, 8, and 10, 11, 10, and 8. Your part number, your approximate O and dot D, dot approximately diameter, wire, approximate free height, and approximate number of terms of material. D, the assembly of 1 removes the nuts of the 24 to figure the 27 strut diaphragm cover, 22 remove of the cover. 2, the remove slide valve strut, and 23 piston, and 14 and slide valve 16. The remaining operation portion can now be readily removed of the from the valve body. Take the care of the avoided distortion of damage to the parts with respect to the piston of the springs, gaskets, diaphragms, slide valves, and the like items. Here is 826, the filling pieces and the selector valve portions. You see, this is the selector valve, filling pieces for the selector valves. C, cleaning, washing all metal parts is approved by the solvent, dissolves in oil and grease without abrasion. Dip all gaskets, rubber seated parts, and the approved solvent, and to assist the removal of all grease and dirt. Immediately wipe dry after cleaning. Do not soak these parts in the cleaning fluid. Blow out all passages of compressed air. D, inspection and maintenance. Replace all the gaskets which have broken and flattened beads or any reveal cracks of the cuts of diaphragm sealing surfaces. Brush serviceable gaskets, soft bristle brushes such as a shoe brush to remove any of the remaining dirt. Give them a polish. 2, check the piston bushings of the ring sides by using the cylinder gauge. 3, remove the filter felt and choke, cleaning of the replacing renewal if damaged. If the choke is an earlier type which does not have a filter felt, and replaced with the latest design. Recondition the slide valve position is the same as the AB control valve, paragraph 815B 4 and 6. 5, the inspection rings 8, 10, and 11. Rust, pits, distortion, breaks, cracks, permanent sets, or renew all springs that are defective. E, assemble all parts of the parts of the body. 1, press the side of the piston ring opposite the scarf at the bottom of the ring of the groove. Apply 3 the drops of lubrication oil for the ring scarf opening. Restore the ring of the normal position. Rotate the ring in a groove, distributing the oil piston of the ring scarf with approximately 1.5 inches of the either of the side of the piston, top, center. 2, the fewer drops lubricating the oil to the piston, and brushing distributed evenly over the entire surface. Distribute 1 drop of oil on the collar of the piston spring at the end of the collar. End of the piston, then insert the piston and slide valve into the body cover. 3, assemble the parts of the reserve. Assemble the parts in reverse of the removal using the new parts as required. After performance of the code test, install a reconditioned valve with the test rack performance code of the testing in accordance with the TM 552's Aero 23. 828. Shop maintenance of the AB cylinder. Disassembly, removal of shipping cap of the placing piston, assembly of the cleaning workbench. 2, the removal of packing cup. 4, and figure 828 within a wood tool about 1/8 of an inch wide, 1/8 of an inch, or 1 inch wide and 1/8 of an inch thick, with round edges to prevent the damage to packing a cup or piston lubricator. 3, placing piston non-pressure head of the ends of the holding fixture which holds the compression spring partially compressed. 4, removal of collar from the end of the hollow rod. 3, remove the retaining plate of the packing of the sealing. 13. 5, remove the non-pressure head and the compression spring. 9, from the hollow rod. This is A20. This is assembly view of an A22 quick service valve. 1. A flat fitting gasket, 1.5 inch port gasket, a straining choke, a 3/4 of an inch port gasket, 3/4 of an inch flange fitting gasket, cut off valve, diaphragm follower spring. 9. 8/16 of an inch portal gasket, check valve spring and diaphragm compression spring, slide valve, diaphragm, slide valve pin, piston assembly, slide valve locking ring, slide valve. 17 plain seal, 18 piston ring, 19 body gasket, 20 strainer, 21 strainer, 22 diaphragm cover, 23 valve strut, and 24 nut. That's the assembly of an A22 quick service valve. Here we have a AB brake cylinder showing air brake connection when used in an automatic slack adjuster. 1. The push rod. 2. The non-pressure head gasket. 3. The piston and hollow rod. 4. The packing cup. 5. The union gasket. 6. The pressure head gasket. 7. The piston lubrication swab. 8. The cylinder body. 9. The compression spring. 10. The T-head bolts. 11. Strainer assembly. 12. The non-pressure head. 13. Packing seal. And I'm going to back out of this and go back down to 100%. The cleaning, inspection, maintenance, blow all dirt of the non-pressure head of the strainer. 2. The using a scraper solving and cleaning of the assembly recessed non-pressure head of the gasket. 3. While in tile, breaking up any sharp edges within the ends of the opening of the non-pressure head within the guides of the hollow rod. 4. The cleaning of the pistons, hollow rod, and removing any of the rough surfaces. The use of the emery cloth if necessary. 5. Examining the compression spring if the rust spots are found in cleaning of the emery cloth coats of the spring and with the rust prevented. Cleaning the springs, retaining the plane of the seal rings and renewing any ring within which does not closely firmly on hollow rod. Thoroughly clean the packing of the cup with 4. The solvent ring and the piston lubricator as follows. A. The submersive of the pistons lubricator, the tank A of the solvent of the few minutes of these, loosen of the lubricator swab in its groove within the round edge of the blade. Return the lubricating swab of the solvent tank long enough to dissolve the grease. B. From the outer surface of the lubricator swab of the hand brush blow dry the compressed air. C. Renew the lubricator swab as if it is damaged, worn out of such condition that it cannot be loosened, raised, or into its grooves to make a full contact against the cylinder wall. D. Submerge the clean lubricated into a tank of oil for at least 10 minutes and allow it to drain off for about 10 minutes, and this will saturate the lubricated swab of the oil, therefore prevent it from absorbing brake cylinder lubricant. C. Reassembly. 2. 1. Apply the lightly coat the brake cylinder lubricant to the hollow rod at the place of the piston, hollow rod, and the holding fixture. They apply the compression spring. 9. The non-pressure head of the 12. The locking mechanism of the fixture of the compression spring partially compressed. 2. Place the hollow rod lubricating swab over the hollow rod, pushing the recess into the non-pressure head, putting the swab compression on the inner portion of the assembly tool, the slide tool, the outer end of the hollow rod of the contacts of the lubricated swab, with the tool held in the piston pushed firmly out of the portion of the forcing swabbing compression ring of the off tool of the position around the lubricating swab, inserting the brake cylinder, lubricating the non-pressure head of the recess until the space is about one-third full. Place the swab retainer of the lubricating swab and then assemble the seal rings of the opening staggered to completely fill the recess of the brake cylinder lubricant. Apply to the seal ring and retaining the plate, fastening the cap screws secured to the lock with lock washers. 3. Apply the lubricator 7 to the piston within the flat felt and side next to the piston. Apply the packing cup forward the piston, starting the cover over the edge of the piston while holding the piston and working the cup into the place within the hands of the hand. If the cup does not seat properly because of the trapped air, the air can be removed by raising one side of the cup, pushing the cup into the place with the hands, applying the shipping cap over the assembling piston secured with bolts non-pressure headed. 819 shop maintenance of the engine portion of the automatic slack adjuster. A disassembly of the engine portion. 1. Remove the snap ring 31 at figure 829 at the end of the ratchet not bearing and remove the ratchet assembly at the adjuster body at the end of the casting. 2. Remove the check pawl ring and 34 and pawls of 28 and pins 29 and spring 30. 3. Remove the ratchet nut fell and 11 at the end of the ratchet nut bushings 33. 4. The removal of piston packing Cup 21 of using wooden tool with rounded edges about 1 inch wide and a 32 of an inch thick to prevent damage to the packing cup of the piston lubricated swab or the retainer to 20. Remove the lubricator swab 18 and retainer 20. B. Cleaning, inspection, and maintenance. 1. Through all the cleaning parts of the solvent to remove all oil and grease and dirt. 2. Remove all worn and damaged parts. 3. Clean the persistent and lubricate swab retainer as follows. A. Submerge assembly as the tank of oil supplements for a few minutes and loosen the lubricator swab in the groove of the thin round edge of the blade. Return to the solvent tank. Dissolve in grease of the swab. Brush the outer surface of the swab, the hand brush, and removing the oil grease. After swabbing, thoroughly clean and dry with low pressure air. Renewal of the lubricating swab within its worn damage. Such condition it cannot be loosened and raised in the groove to make full contact within the cylinder. Submerge and clean the lubricator in the tank of new journal boxes for oil for at least 10 minutes, and they allow the assembly to drain about 10 minutes to saturate the swab, prevents the absorption of the oil from the brake cylinder, lubricating. See, reassembly the engine portion, lubricate the cylinder wall and piston packaging 21 in the brake cylinder lubrication. 2. The piston spring 26 of the pockets casing, 27 of the piston, 22 on the top of the top of the spring. Apply to the cylinders of the piston over the packaging cup. 3. The applying the pressure to the floor of the cylinder into the place of the resistance of the piston spring before the pressure is applied during the application of the pressure, holding knockout lug away from the contact of the pawl of the stop. 25. The prevent the rupture of the part of the knockout lug of the part of the pawl. 14. Assembly 14. Accessibly through the adjuster body opening in the case. 27. The pawl can be reached by removing the pipe plug. 15. Stand by ratchet assembly on the brass nut at the ends of the reassembly of the pawl ring, pawls, pins, and springs on the ratchet nut. Lubricating these parts of the ratchet nut bearing of 6 ounces of graphite grease. 5. The lubricating of the case completely with the piston springs in position with the over ratchet nut. Saturate the ratchet nut 11 with the journal oil point and put into place with next to the ratchet nut bushing 33 in this felt that some worn and does not seal with against the ratchet nut. Renew the felt. 6. Replace the felt retainer 32, snapping 31. 7. Protect reconditioned engine portions against the damaged entrance dust and during the storage. 1. Section 5, or the second figure 829 slack adjuster automatic type slot assembly valve. 1. A crosshead, 2. Crosshead pin, 3. Crosshead cap, 4. Crosshead rivet, 5. Adjuster screw, 6. Adjuster screw nut, 7. Package ring, 8. Bolt hold plug, 9. Cylinder cap screw, 4 each, 10. Oil plug, 2 each, 11. Ratchet nut felt, 12. Ratchet nut, 13. Stop plug, 14. pawl, 15. Pipe plug, 16. pawl pin, 17. Cylinder, 17. Swab or cylinder, 18. Swab, 19. Cylinder plug, 2 each, 20. Swab retainer, 21. Packaging, 22. Piston punch, 23. pawl spring, 24. Piston pawl stop screw, 25. pawl stop, 26. pawl piston springs, 27. Casing, 28. Checking pawl, 2 each, 29. Checking pawl pin, 2 each, 30. Checking pawl spring, 2 each, 31. Snap ring, 32. Felt retainer, 33. Ratchet nut bushing, 34. Ratchet checking pawl ring, 35. Adjusting screw nut spring, 35. Cross bolt and lock washer, 3 each. Section 5 spring capacity freight car brake equipment. 820 features. A. General, a type of K triple valve illustrated in the description in the manual, formerly standard for the single cylinder of the freight car brake equipment process. Possesses the feature of quick action, quick service, uniform release, and uniform recharge. The quick brake equipment has been released in the context of the AB type and no longer accepted in the interchange of service of the U.S. railroads. However, much of the U.S. Army owned rolling stock are using the Conas installation overseas areas and equipped for the K brake equipment, so its features are discussed for the information of the TRS maintenance personnel who may be unfamiliar with the type of freight of the car braking. Quick action feature. The function which the emergency rate of the brake pipe reduction takes place in the form of any cause for each ensures the quick drop of the brake pipe pressure. The opening directed communication between the brake pipe and brake cylinder at the triple valve, and when causing them next try triple valve in the function of the same manner. The thereby propagating that the emergency rate of the brake cylinder reduction, securing the maximum brake of the cylinder pressure through the entire training of the fast rate. And C, the quick service feature. The feature produces uniform quick action and application of the brake in service of the application along the train reduces shocks. Therefore, in true service position of the triple valve ports, quick service and full service of the valves is in quick opening. In addition, quick service ports are in brake cylinder hasten the transmission service position, and the service portion of the fully open of the quick service port do not register. The proper portion of the trains and brake pressure is fall more rapidly for a certain reduction of the brake valve than the long trains. Consequently, the train is long the triple valve, the stop of the quick service portion as the partially open of the service portion and permitted the auxiliary reserve pressure to fall as rapidly as the brake pipe pressure is reducing. When the train is short and the triple valve ports will directly to the full service position as the reduced rate of the reduction of such as a full opening the service port of the necessary order to the auxiliary reserve and the pressure as may cause them to keep the pace within the brake pipe uniform. The release of the brake breacher and that brings about the uniform release of the brake pressure of the long terms of the lessen the possibility of shock during the release of the operational spring place of the auxiliary reserve end of the triple valve and the projection of the stem and the stops of the triple valve with the valve which is called the release position unless the pressure in the brake pipe is increased about 3 pounds above the auxiliary reserve of the spring compressor as to the slide valve and consequently made by the further inward travel retarded release portion partially closing the exhaust portion, thereby making release of the brake cylinder pressure slower than by 50 cars. The train longer is impossible to raise the brake pipe pressure 3 pounds higher than the auxiliary reserve for more than 30 cars back to the train. Therefore, the brake cylinder exhaust is retarded only for the first 30 cars, but then beyond the releasing of the normal rate, but then those at the head and end of the commercial to release the first, thus the rear end of the last. The result, in particular, on the uniform release of the train as a whole. E. The uniform recharge feature. The U feature ensures that the recharge is nearly uniform throughout the long train, so that the tendency of the head brake and the reapply the reduces the brake valve is returned to the renewing position more nearly uniform application short of the release. Impossible that this uniform recharge is brought by decreasing of size, recharging the grooves and the triple size of the recharging of the grooves of the triple valve retarded release position and the position sealing against the slide valve bushing except for the one point where thereby feeded grooves and smaller than the piston bushing as in the tight. This can only be the pressure is in the brake pipe and the higher than the auxiliary reserve. It is seen as the pressure pipe, or when the pressure is the highest, the charging of the ports is the smallest, where then the pressure is the lowest, the rear end of the charging ports are the largest. Thus, the recharge is uniform, and because of the higher pressure, when charged through the small port of the low pressure with the through the larger part. 821 equipment parts.